time, Bob has a reading for us. So Bob, if you would take it away.
Okay, and is my volume okay?
Yeah.
Okay. This is The Colors of Life by Betsy Spalding. Consider the amazing bulb flowers, hyacinth, crocus, daffodils. Bulb resurrections sprouting in corners of yards, fences, in unexpected places, though they appear year after year. Consider bulb ability to respond to the mixed up weather. Amazing force with which they emerge and reach up to the sky, slicing through accumulated leaves and earth not long ago frozen. Springing up with joy to show their colors. Bulbs get on the vital endeavor, life. Sometimes they suspend their progress, chilled to a stop by the freezing winds, buds clenched tight for protection. And then sometimes when the weather warms or the rains quench, bulb plants surge upwards. You can measure the growth in inches per hour, unstoppable in their rush to smile back at the sun. We too are equipped with that inexorable drive to show our colors, to fulfill our lives. What coldness of mind or spirit keeps our life restrained? What deep freeze of doubt or fear or numbness? What layers have accumulated to thwart, distort, or impede our thriving? Be gardeners. Peel back the thwarting accumulation of old ideas, of untried impressions, habits, fears, and unexamined doubts, revealing the struggling shoots of life, and wait. Through wind and rain and cold, watch and wait. For the warmth will come again. Smiles will appear. With surges of joy, the colors of life will grow into being. All in good time. All in good time.
I think I'm back. And you really want to hear me for this part because I'm going to talk about money. So, while we can't pass the basket on Zoom, please remember to donate to this congregation. Send in your pledge or donate online, because even though we aren't meeting a person, the money's used to find speakers, to arrange worship, and to continue your work and presence in the community. So when you give, whether right now or later this week, do it as an act of worship for what you value. Bob, you have a second reading for us.
Yes, this is from Rebirth and Resurrection by Francis Manley. More than this, spring is about the leaping of our hearts, the rising of our spirits, the burgeoning of our hope when we feel the first warm sun on our faces and see the first yellow-green buds begin to swell. It is the celebration that within us too, spring can come. Again and again it comes. No matter how low our spirits, no matter how pained our bodies, no matter how cold our hearts, the seeds of hope are always there beneath the ground, awaiting the soul's unpredictable rhythms of rebirth.
Thank you, Bob. You know, I really hate the butterfly thing. So many people find it meaningful and sweet. The ugly caterpillar crawls into a cocoon, rests for a time, and then, wow, emerges as a beautiful butterfly. It's used as a symbol of transformation, of new beginnings, and it's so lovely, an enchanting metaphor for growth and change. And it's just too tidy and too saccharine. The truth is more compelling. The part that we don't talk about is what really makes it a good analogy for change. Once the caterpillar builds its cocoon and is snug and safe, when it's all enclosed in its protective shell, the change begins. And the caterpillar doesn't just morph into a beautiful butterfly. In order to transform, the caterpillar disintegrates and becomes mush. The process is so arduous, so demanding, that the creepy, crawly little bug is pulverized. Inside that cozy cocoon, it is chaos. Then, after this deconstruction, this annihilation, the creature begins to rebuild. It uses the gunk to make something new, better, brilliant. Transformation is not a gentle process. Anyone who's been through a conversion can tell you it is hell. It is not a rearrangement of the parts. It is deconstruction. And then, after completely coming apart, there is the work of rebuilding. Metamorphosis is not pretty. Metamorphosis, you know, I have to stop for just a moment. I am so sorry. My computer just wiped out everything on the screen. This is the metaphor for the falling apart. Instead of this service running beautifully and lovely on my end, it gets to become chaos for a little while. And I will be your illustration of some of the stuff that goes on into that cocoon. So I was saying that the process is so arduous that this bug is actually pulverized. And after it's just become mush, then it rebuilds into something new. And people know this as well. It's not a rearrangement of the parts, it's a deconstruction. And then after completely falling apart, there is a work of rebuilding. Metamorphosis is not pretty. If this distressing part of the process were included in the butterfly illustration, I'd be okay with the trope. It would give us a more realistic, honest example of change. Here's the thing. Change always involves loss, even if it's changed to something that's good. I tell my wedding couples that there's an aspect of getting married that no one really talks about: the grief. When two people commit to each other, no matter how much they love each other or how well suited they are, there is loss. But we don't tell an engaged couple about this. We focus on the ceremony and the reception and the happy ever after. I like to warn them that if they find some sadness or notice that they don't have all the enthusiasm they expected, it does not necessarily mean they have cold feet. They may be mourning what they have to give up in order to gain this union. If they can acknowledge that experiencing loss is a normal part of making such a big change, then they can talk about it, not be threatened by it, and support each other as they move forward. I'm guessing that everyone listening who's had a baby, everyone who's become a parent, can share stories of all the unexpected forfeitures that accompanied their little bundle of joy. Something is always taken away or given up to make way for what's new. We are in the middle of change. You, me, this congregation, the whole world. The past year and a half has been a tsunami of different experiences, expectations, interpretations, and events. There is very little in our life that has not been impacted. A cursory list of our altered circumstances is dizzying. A comprehensive list of all we've faced is formidable. As a reminder, here are a few words to nudge your memory about our collective experience. Before I read these, I invite you to take a deep breath. It's a lot to hear. Worldwide pandemic, lockdown, toilet paper, changing guidelines, PPE, healthcare system, closing businesses and restaurants, working from home, distance learning, Zoom, eviction moratorium, hydroxychloroquine, said that wrong, food banks, dark theaters, sweatpants, NBA bubble, masks, 20 Democratic president candidates, polarized citizens, Russian interference, Brexit, kids in cages, Rudy Giuliani, Dr. Fauci, Hunter Biden, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, first Black, South Asian, female vice president, stolen election, insurrection, impeachment, twice, acquittal, twice, banned from Twitter, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, say their name, I can't breathe, protests, tear gas, riots, counter-protests, systemic racism, white supremacy, Confederate flag, Dr. Seuss, becoming woke, Jim Crow, hate crimes, statues, Karens, Chauvin trial, disparity, voter restrictions, Australian brush fires, California wildfires, Texas snowstorm, Philippine volcano, extreme hurricanes, climate change deniers, clean air, quiet, animals, murder hornets, conspiracy theories, Al-Anon, satanic, democratic, pedophile cannibals, election fraud, Rush Limbaugh, UFOs, the Me Too movement, Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Matt Gaetz, accused leaders and celebrities, domestic terrorists, cyber attacks, Facebook blots, no mass shootings, Perseverance rover on Mars, Beirut explosion, GameStop, Suez Canal, non-fungible tokens, unprecedented. Did you feel pummeled? I do. The last year and a half has been mind-boggling. The new word for it is Omnishambles. That seems accurate. We've been in the chrysalis, turning to mush. Our world and our way of living has disintegrated, and we haven't yet morphed into a butterfly. But we have started to reconstitute. We don't know yet what we will be, yet we have started to hope. We are becoming more optimistic. People are getting vaccinated. The economy has started to open up. Some businesses are coming back. Some people are finding work. Some schools are unlocking their doors. Less than 2 weeks ago, when the guilty verdict was announced at the close of George Floyd's murder trial, we collectively released our breath. Masks are no longer required for some instances. Spring is in the air, and our spirits are coming out of a long, self-protective dormancy. Life is returning. We have yet to see the shape of our new normal. We desire to emerge from our fantastic ordeal as better people who create a better world. Change is very hard, harder than we expect. The fact that it entails so many losses doesn't help. In our Western culture, we don't do well with loss, destruction, and death. We like to keep things positive. When God closes a door, God opens a window. There's always tomorrow. We are realistic because we know that there are problems in this world. But we don't like to acknowledge that distress and disarray are necessary before genuine growth and reinvention. We aren't Pollyanna. We do know it's hard. Still, we would rather focus on the butterfly, delicately stepping from the hollow chrysalis. When I was in seminary, trying to discern a better understanding of God than the one I had grown up with, one of the things I liked best and that resonated with my heart came from a sermon I heard. The preacher asserted that in the Bible, other names for God were love, light, and life. I could get behind that. Scott Peck's definition of love worked for me. It's very practical. Love is the willingness to exert one's self for what is best for the beloved. Light, that's what allows us to see what is there. The stumbling blocks we would not see in the dark, the truth at that moment. Light leads to enlightenment. And life finds a way. No matter what obstacles are placed before it, life finds a way to grow around it, pushes past it, and even conquers death. Like plants that crop up from decay and reach around boulders to follow the sun. Love, light, life. I could trust that. And then we went to India. The niceties of our Western theology were in my face when Bob and I traveled to India. Everywhere, really, everywhere we went, in temples, roadside altars, on the sidewalk, in people's homes and public places, restaurants, shops, on the sides of buildings, on the ground, nooks and crannies, just about everywhere we turned, there were worship sites for Shiva. It became both comical and overwhelming. To my Occidental mind, this just didn't make sense. Out of all the gods to choose from in the Hindu faith, what is this obsession with the god of death and destruction? Doesn't make sense. I like love and light and life. Other cultures embrace chaos, ruination, and death. Here in the West, they are the enemy. By religion or by the strength and knowledge of the human spirit, we seek to overcome the darkness. We are most at ease when havoc is righted, when rot is swept away, when there is kindness, when there's not a threat of annihilation. This God of love and light and life, I realized, was really no match for the afflictions and trials inherent in this world. In changing my theology, and incidentally, one of the things I love about being a Unitarian Universalist, and one of the things I chose from this denomination, is that I am encouraged to change my theology as I grow and not stay with a set theology. And so my theology changed after this experience in India. I was not at a place where I could add death to my understanding of the holy, but I could grasp a God of change. And eventually, my theology became big enough to add God of darkness and god of death. The divine, being part of the chaos, being the chaos, makes sense when we think about nature and when we remember our myths and stories. The hero's journey is a great example. Tumult, disintegration, and deadness clear the way for something new. The universe is not afraid of chaos. We are just beginning to poke out of the muck and mire of our lives. Encouraging news gets through our clogged ears, and actions that were so normal long ago are slowly returning. Now they are precious to us. This season of spring is particularly heartening, and we know things are still tentative. The times, they are changing. Perhaps you've heard of Menninger's moral curve. It comes out of the research of Dr. Walter Menninger, outlining 4 predictable stages of psychological functioning when people experience a major change in their lives. Very briefly, here's what we may be in for as we make our way out of our cataclysmic cocoon. Stage 1, excitement. We are at the threshold of something new. This is the honeymoon period. There is enthusiasm, strong motivation, energy, as well as anxiety, apprehension, and panic. We are hopeful about the future while wondering, can I do this? Stage 2, disillusionment. We are involved and we start to notice that things are not what they seemed to be when we started. We encounter negative surprises. We might feel depressed, frustrated, full of grief, disillusionment, and loss. And there's a great deal of regret for the lost good past. There's a lot of stress. And this is where we hit bottom. Perhaps you've noticed that when we face some horrible event, a natural disaster or a human-made calamity, the first thing we see are the heroes. Stories abound of people pulling together, risking their very lives to help others. Selflessness, unflinching acts of rescue and support. These heartwarming and inspiring accounts are what we hear about and what we share once we have some information about the tragedy. What we don't often hear about, unless we are directly involved, is what follows this bonding experience. Next are the gripes, complaints, accusations, and disgruntlement spreading throughout the community. Folks familiar with disaster work will tell you that this is part of the restoration process. So it will be with us. Stage 3, anger. All of this frustration builds into anger. And it isn't a bad thing. We can acknowledge that things are a mess and then buckle down and find ways to deal with it. The anger can give us energy and motivation to do what needs to be done. This is also the stage where people give up and leave. If the anger is not handled well, it pushes people away instead of drawing them in. Stage 4, integration. We have survived the big hurdles. We have some success and are pleased with our new competencies. Things that we intended might not be what actually comes, but we still feel a measure of contentment. We experience less disillusionment with ourselves and others, less preoccupation with the present, and are able to look to the future. If you feel beat up, worn out, and pretty much dissolved, That is appropriate. We've been in the cocoon mush a long time. If you feel tentatively hopeful, you have good reasons. The cocoon, which started as a comfortable shelter, has become a constraint. Things are opening up. I think we are in the any club. Already a new world has arrived. It is not yet fully come. We are in a new paradigm, and we yearn for what used to be. The tension of transition. A and Y. Already? Not yet. We have some say in what our world will become, and the arc of change reminds us that we are not in control. Still, there is hope. As we venture out into a new way of life that is very different from what we were a year ago, or a year and a half ago, as we move through this very disparate landscape, we are not alone. And we share a guide, a map, as we discover and create. Our Unitarian universal principles are more important now than ever. They are simple, but not easy. We promote and affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Respect for the inherent web of all existence of which we are a part. Let's return to our butterfly metaphor. After the pulp has become a different being, it's still not done. When the butterfly emerges, its wings are small and wet. It cannot fly. And first it pumps fluid from its abdomens and through the veins in the wings, expanding them to their full size. And then the wings must dry. After this, the butterfly has to exercise its muscles, and then it can fly. Be gentle and patient with yourselves. Whether you dig, crawl, trudge, walk, skip, or dance out of your weary shelter, you can take pride in living through this time of trial. You are a different creature now. And allow yourselves the grace to steady and ready yourself. And then, into our new world, fly. Amen and amen.